So I want to start this morning by simply having a conversation with you. We're going to do this several times throughout this morning because the goal is not just to present information. The goal is to make this as actionable and as clear as possible this morning. And my hope is that there might be a few concrete takeaways. So the first question that I'd love for you to do, pair and share, just turn to someone right next to you. Imagine that the year is 2050. Imagine that you have the opportunity. You've been gone for a few years. Imagine you have the opportunity to come back to your organization, the organization that you care about so much. And what is it that you hope is still there? What is the core mission that in the year 2050 you hope is still as vibrant then as it is right now? Because this conversation that we're having, I have looked at it originally through the lens of Hope International, but I believe entirely that this has application for any organization that is founded with a mission. Why do we exist? And what is it that you hope would still exist in the year 2050? So just take 3 minutes, pair and share. What is your core mission? What is it that you would hope still remains in the year 2050? Is it possible that over time, is it possible that what matters most to you might be lost over time? Is it possible? And our research in this says this: it will happen. Drift will happen unless you decide to do something about it. It's one of these in Stephen Covey, important but not urgent issues. It's in a category that says this is really important in the long-term implementation of your mission, but it never feels urgent. It never feels like today this is an issue because you know your mission, you know what you believe in, you know what matters most, and yet oftentimes it is a story of benign neglect that one day in the future, what is happening might be impossible to feel connected to you. And if you're a founder, what you are all about. So the question is, what causes organizations to drift from their founding purpose and passion? The story of pawn shops is just one of many. What are the factors that contribute to this? How does this drift? How does this slow but steady drift happen? We found that there are 12 contributing factors to drift that are the big 12. Now today I'm only going to talk about 3 of them. 3 of the factors that we believe are really significant when it comes to drift. And I hope that, again, there might be just 1 or 2 very concrete and practical takeaways for you today. So the first thing that we found, that the organizations that stayed on mission, that had scaled, that had professionalized, that had continued to implement their mission with excellence, the first thing, it's so obvious that no one wrote it as one of the factors. It's so obvious, but it is this: believe drift happens. It's this: believe that drift is real. Believe that if there is not a lack of intentionality, that you will follow the well-worn pattern of mission drift. Very rarely do we have eyes to see that there are currents that exist in life, in leadership, in the things that matter most. You don't drift to where you want to be. You never drift to the most important places. That takes work. It takes intentionality, as you shared. It takes hard work. And so the question is, what are the currents? What are the currents, and how do we be aware of them before it's too late? Here's the pattern in higher education. Here's the pattern in business. Here's the pattern in philanthropy. Here's the pattern in nonprofits. It's the passions of the first generation become the preferences of the second generation, and they become irrelevant to the third generation. That's the pattern. That's the pattern that happens, and it happens a lot, and it happens fast. So if you buy this, if you buy that it's possible for the things that you care about today to be forgotten by future generations, how do I get from this side of the stage to the other side of the stage? I mean, can I jump? Is there one step? No. It's a series of very small steps. And in the same way, all of these things in and of themselves, it's not like you're going to wake up tomorrow and have some egregious diversion from your mission. But the challenge for you as leaders is to say, was that a step? Was that a step? Because it is the small steps, when compounded by time, that will determine your destination. And if there's not that clarity of this is the direction we're going, if you don't have clarity about this is the way that you were going, then you don't know if you're starting to take steps in a very different direction. What we found is that organizations that stayed on mission, the second piece, first was what? They believe drift happens. They believe that this is inevitable unless they do nothing to prevent it. The second thing that they had in common consistently was they said, our mission matters, and you've already addressed this. There is clarity, there is communication, there is an element of them codifying what matters to them and what they hope stays in place. So just one small way, do you have your founding story? Is it down? Is it told? Is there some way that it's not just written down, but is there some way that when new staff come in, you don't take it for granted? Your story matters. And how many of you are founders of your organization? For you especially, your story matters. And I hope that future generations don't just know the what, but they can see what was it? What was it that caused you to step out? What caused you to step out? What caused you to create, to initiate? And yet for so many of us, we're busy, we take it for granted, and we miss the opportunity to tell the story of this is what we're all about. It's one of the easiest ways to put a small stake in the ground to prevent drift. One of the small ways of simply saying this is our story. Intentionality of practice. So believe drift happens, believe that this is real, believe that it could happen to us. Write it down, document, here's what matters most to us, here is our founding purpose, and then do stuff. That could be the third one. Just do stuff. Make sure that it is connected to the daily rhythms, practices, habits, culture. Make sure that it is not just something that is forgotten about. Make it a living part of your discussion and make it part of your decision making. For the decisions that you make, every decision is an opportunity to take a step to your founding purpose and mission or away from it. It's that simple. Every small decision is an opportunity to reinforce your mission, to reinforce what matters, or to slowly be carried away in a direction that you may not want to go.